Hey everybody on YouTube, Karl here, and in today's video, I'm taking a look at The Division. It's a big review, so let's get into it. Tom Clancy's The Division was released on March 8th, 2016 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows PCs. It's the latest in the long-running Tom Clancy series, and was developed by Ubisoft Massive and Red Storm Entertainment. The Division is an open-world, online third-person shooter based in a post-disaster version of Manhattan Island, and is focused around a viral outbreak that has sent the city into chaos. The current retail price is $60. First off, the game looks great. Not only is the overall appearance really good, but the detail is just incredible. Other modern games may have better anti-aliasing and more cinematic lighting, but The Division packs so much detail into every street. Manhattan feels like a real place with everything left behind after the panic. Stuff like overturned trucks of infected bodies, and even little details like used latex gloves at abandoned makeshift clinics. I was constantly amazed at the sheer amount of handcrafted locations that you'll probably only see once. In many ways, that fine detail is underutilized. The quick run-and-gun mission-based combat makes it easy to overlook how awesome the city looks and how fully realized it is. It not only looks good, but also tells a story itself. You can imagine the panic and chaos just through the objects around you. The sound effects of all the environmental stuff and weapons are great and have a good three-dimensional feel. The soundtrack is okay, its tracks are good, but I feel like I hear the same riffs over and over again. Performance is mostly solid on my GTX 1070. Of course, my CPU bottlenecks a bit, and I'm assuming some online related lag causes a few issues as well. A few parts of the city dip my FPS to the mid-50s, high 40s, but during missions and most regular parts of the city, the game holds a smooth, steady 60 FPS on Ultra. The story of The Division doesn't have an exact time period, but presumably it's around present day. On Black Friday, a smallpox epidemic is spread through infected banknotes in New York City. It becomes quickly obvious that this was an act of biological terrorism and sends New York into a full-scale panic. During the panic, Manhattan is quarantined and an elite group of sleeper agents known as the Division are activated to handle the crisis. The first wave of Division agents eventually go dark, and you are part of a second wave being sent in to stabilize the city and figure out what happened to the previous group of agents. While in transport to the island, your helicopter is destroyed, killing Division Command, leaving you and Agent Faye Lau as the only Division agents left to handle the chaotic Manhattan. Because Faye is injured in the explosion, it's your job to stabilize the city and assist in setting up a mobile Division base to fight the infection and the multiple groups of looters and raiders. At first, the game presents the story as a very integral part of the game. There are cutscenes with a lot of dialogue, quite a bit of backstory and plot is packed in the first few hours. However, the game story soon becomes secondary to just playing the game. After those first few hours, the story is mostly told through radio communications on the way to missions and through evidence found at mission locations. Occasionally you'll have a mission that unlocks a cutscene explaining more of the backstory, but these are few and far between. This was a bit disappointing. I understand this is an online game focused on gear upgrades and leveling, but the early focus on story gave me some different expectations. The story definitely has more going for it than a lot of other shooter games. It does have some ridiculous concepts and some odd motivations for its enemies, but nothing that ruins the experience. Its biggest issue is that it's put on the back burner. This well-developed story becomes a backdrop to the endless grind. Online games struggle with hitting that balance of story and gameplay, and like so many other games, The Division just doesn't hit that sweet spot. Gameplay is a lot like other third-person tactical shooters. The combat's focus is centered around a simple cover system, which does make the game feel more tactical, but also presents some issues. While the cover mechanics work well most of the time, the game's simple scale cover or get into cover options can get you turned around easily. I died many times simply being obstructed by objects because of the cover mechanics. However, combat is fun. You have weapon slots available for a primary and secondary weapon, as well as a sidearm. Pretty standard fare. The big difference here is the level system and the modding. As you continue through the game, you will level up, and with that you gain new and more powerful weapons, that you can also add a good deal of modification to. Add on the large amount of differing armors, skills, and talents, and the game really does give you a huge amount of options on how to approach combat. Your skills feature things like scanners to detect life, mobile gun turrets, group healing items, sticky bombs, and tons of other buffs. Eventually you can do things like augment your skills with secondary options, such as a gun turret that shoots electric shocks instead of regular ammunition. I won't be looking in depth into this, but I will say there is a surprising number of skills that have a ton of uses. The actual leveling system works much like any other MMO type game. Manhattan is split into several zones that are leveled, so as you level up, you can access more of the city without getting killed. The main story is progressed by doing specific instance missions throughout the city, though only doing those missions will not be enough to level your character. You'll need to do things like side missions and encounters to gain XP. These include supply drop defenses, rescuing hostages, assisting the local military fight off looters, and things of that nature. As you level, you also upgrade your home base. These upgrades serve as your skill and talent unlocks. The base also houses weapon and gear vendors. This is a cool system that you can use to obtain certain upgrades faster, and it also serves as a visual reminder of your progress. Your base starts as a crappy outpost with a few people and transforms into a busy command center. The main story missions are definitely the most challenging and best part of the game, but are also the only part of the game that requires you to join a group. Most of the side missions and encounters can be done by a single person, so the game's online focus is light as far as the early game goes. The story missions could be done with a single person, but I found it too difficult and frustrating after the first few. The only times I played with people were during these missions, and since the combat is so straightforward, it generally didn't require anyone communicating. It was fun playing with other people, but once the mission's over, we all went our separate ways. I don't know anyone on PC who plays this, so I was by myself most of the time. I can imagine side missions and encounters would be more fun with others, but the game doesn't really encourage it. There is, however, a huge zone in the middle of Manhattan known as the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone is where the infection hit the hardest and has been fully closed off by the local forces. The Dark Zone is an odd attempt at PvP. Inside the Dark Zone you can kill other players, but it will mark you as a rogue agent, which seemed to be enough to stop most people from killing each other. Other than agents, the Dark Zone is packed with high-end enemies that are just incredible bullet sponges. The combat really loses its fun in this zone as enemies just have way too much health. The Dark Zone does feature its own currency and has the best gear, but at least while leveling, it seemed like more of a hassle than a fun PvP zone. Since gears dropped on death in the Dark Zone, other players seem more inclined to make sure they got out alive than start some shit with another player. However, I admit I haven't played much of the in-game Dark Zone, and I have been told that it's harsher and more focused on PvP, which makes me wonder why the Dark Zone is even accessible to people who haven't reached level 30. Overall, the Division's gameplay is solid but very repetitive. At first, side missions and encounters are fun, but as you progress, the missions quickly become dull. I don't like using the term grindfest, as most video games are a grind of some kind, but the single player focus and lack of any context to how good your gear is makes the grind feel pointless. There are genuinely great moments in this game, where you take out some checkpoint with tactical precision, and that last enemy's death followed by the mission complete sound effect feels great.
Confirmed. Cargo secured. GTF notified for pickup.
But those moments are too few, and the lack of a guild or party makes the success feel short-lived. The game seems to have a severe identity crisis. At times it wants to be a plot-driven narrative about a pending global disaster, and the rest of the time it wants to be a sort of free-roaming pseudo-MMO with some mild PvP. Overall, it feels underdeveloped. It's got a great concept, an awesome presentation, a fleshed-out interesting story, and some good third-person combat, but somehow it doesn't feel right. I've enjoyed my time with the game, but at 23 hours in, I'm not sure how much longer that'll last. Online games need communities to keep you coming back, and the Division's focus on the single-player experience may be its undoing. The quest of filling up bars and earning more experience is a strong force, but if the underlying motivation isn't there, it becomes a grind. Something like World of Warcraft gets away with it because it's such a community-driven game. The grind enables your team to succeed. The Division leaves you filling up bars, upgrading weapons, and pumping hundreds upon hundreds of rounds into fucking immortal bullet sponges. But for who? For you? For the online randos? That's the fundamental question this game can't answer. Again, even though it sounds like I'm being really down on the game, I did enjoy it. It's got solid mechanics, and some challenging yet fun missions. If you want a game to just play a few rounds of and kill some bad dudes, it's a great option. And if you've got friends who play, I bet it could be pretty damn fun. The Division isn't a great game, but it's also nowhere close to being a bad game. It's just a game that doesn't quite know what it is. Okay everybody, that was my video for this week. I hope you liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, I think you know what to do. Leave me a comment in the comment section and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this one in the future. Coming up next week, I'm going to be doing a video on overclocking my FX-6350 with my GTX 1070. We're going to see how much performance I get out of just a little bit of overclocking on that processor. So hopefully you'd stick around for that one, and I'll see you then.